Stop. Just stop for a moment. Take one slow breath and look at these words as if they were meant to reach you at exactly this point in your life. Because maybe they were. You could have watched another video. You could have kept scrolling. You could have ignored this message completely. But somehow, you are here, listening to these words right now. And there is something you need to understand. You are not standing in the same place you were a few months ago. Something inside you has been changing. Maybe you noticed it when certain conversations suddenly stopped feeling meaningful. Maybe you felt it when people you once felt close to started moving in a different direction. Maybe you have been sitting quietly at night, wondering why the old version of your life no longer feels like it belongs to you. You may not have had an answer, but you felt it. That strange feeling that something is ending, even though you cannot see what is beginning. And this is where your expansion starts. Not when everything becomes perfect. Not when everyone finally understands you. Not when you have every answer. It begins the moment you realize that you cannot keep becoming smaller just to remain comfortable inside a life you have already outgrown. You are entering a different phase now. And before you think this is just another motivational message, listen carefully. There is a reason the idea of expansion keeps appearing in your life. A word, a thought, a sudden realization, a feeling you cannot explain. Something keeps pointing you toward a larger version of yourself. But what if expansion does not begin by gaining something? What if it begins by releasing something? Think about a door that has been closed for a very long time. You stand in front of it, waiting for it to open. You try harder. You become more patient. You ask why nothing is changing. But then one day, you notice something strange. The door was never locked. You were simply standing on the wrong side of it. And that may be what has been happening in your life. You have been waiting for permission to become who you already know you are becoming. You have been waiting for a sign. You have been waiting for confidence. You have been waiting for the perfect moment. But perhaps this video is not here to give you permission. Perhaps it is here to remind you that you already have it. You are ready to move beyond the identity that was built from fear, rejection, disappointment, and the need to be accepted. You are ready to stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What if my life is about to become bigger than anything I imagined?" Because here is the part most people never understand. Expansion can feel uncomfortable before it feels beautiful. When your old identity begins to loosen, you may feel confused. When old relationships change, you may feel alone. When familiar opportunities disappear, you may wonder if you made a mistake. But sometimes the closed door is not punishment. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes the delay is not rejection. Sometimes it is preparation. And sometimes the silence you have been experiencing is not emptiness at all. It is space. Space for something new to enter. There is a version of you that does not react to every setback. A version that does not chase people who are walking away. A version that does not beg life to stay the same. A version that can stand in uncertainty and still say, "I know I am becoming more." That version is not somewhere far away. It is already inside you. And every time you choose peace over chaos, every time you choose growth over approval, every time you stop returning to what broke you, you move closer to it. This is why your recent changes matter. The things you thought were random may have been preparing you. The endings may have been clearing space. The uncomfortable moments may have been stretching your limits. And the questions you have been carrying may be leading you toward an answer you were not ready to hear before. You are not losing yourself. You are meeting yourself without the old limitations. And remember this line, because it may stay with you long after this video ends. Your expansion begins the moment you stop asking your old life for permission to become your new self. Now take another breath. Because we are only at the beginning. There is a deeper reason this transformation feels different this time. Something about the way you see yourself is shifting. And once that shift happens, you will understand why certain doors had to close, why certain people had to leave, and why this message found you today. But first, you need to see what has actually been changing inside you. For a moment, forget everything outside this video. Forget the messages waiting for you. Forget the things you still need to finish. Forget the questions that have been running through your mind. Just stay here, because now we go deeper. You have probably noticed that your reaction to certain things has changed. Things that once had the power to destroy your peace may not affect you in the same way anymore. Someone ignores you, and instead of chasing them, you become quiet. Someone misunderstands you, And instead of explaining yourself for hours, you let them think what they want. Something does not work out. And even though it hurts, a small part of you says, maybe this is making room for something better. That small voice matters. Because expansion does not always arrive as excitement. Sometimes it arrives as detachment. Sometimes it looks like losing interest in what you once begged to keep. Sometimes it feels like waking up one morning and realizing, I cannot go back. You may still remember the old version of yourself. The one who needed everyone to understand. The one who worried about being left behind. The one who kept asking whether other people approved. The one who believed that staying familiar was safer than becoming different. But that version of you had a purpose. It helped you survive certain seasons. It taught you lessons. It carried you through moments nobody else saw. And now, it may be time to thank that version of yourself and let it rest. Imagine walking through an enormous desert. For miles, there is nothing but sand. No buildings. No signs. No clear path. You begin wondering whether you are going in the right direction. Then, far ahead, you see something. A small light. At first, you think it is only your imagination. You keep walking. The light becomes brighter. You keep walking. And suddenly you understand. The desert was never proof that you were lost. It was the space you had to cross before reaching the next place. Your current uncertainty may be the same. You are not necessarily behind. You are not necessarily failing. You may simply be between identities. The old you has become too small, and the new you has not fully arrived yet. That space can feel strange. It can feel lonely. It can make you question everything. But it is also where transformation happens. This is where your internal frequency begins to change. Not because some magical force suddenly fixes your life, but because your choices begin changing. Your attention changes. Your standards change. Your boundaries change. And eventually, your entire experience begins responding to those changes. You stop looking for proof that you are worthy. You start living as if you already know it. You stop asking why someone did not choose you. You start asking why you were willing to abandon yourself just to be chosen. You stop trying to control every outcome. You start trusting yourself enough to handle whatever comes next. That is expansion. And there is something else you need to understand. You may have been measuring your progress by what you gained. More money. More attention. More opportunities. More people around you. But real expansion can begin with subtraction. Less fear. Less comparison. Less explaining. Less chasing. Less pretending. Less carrying things that were never yours to carry. And when all that unnecessary weight begins falling away, you suddenly discover how much energy you actually have. This is why some parts of your life may feel unusually quiet right now. The silence is not always a warning. Sometimes silence is where your new direction becomes clear. So if you have been feeling different lately, do not rush to label it. Do not immediately assume something is wrong. Pay attention. Notice what no longer feels right. Notice what gives you peace. Notice which dreams keep returning. Notice which opportunities make something inside you come alive. Because your next chapter may not arrive with a loud announcement. It may begin with one quiet decision. One boundary. One no. One courageous yes. One moment where you finally say, I am not going back to who I was just because the future feels unfamiliar. And that decision can change everything. Sometimes your biggest breakthrough begins when you finally stop forcing yourself to fit inside a life you have already outgrown. Let that sink in. Because there is still one question. If you really are expanding, why does it sometimes feel like everything around you is falling apart? Why do the old patterns become louder right before you leave them? Why does fear sometimes appear exactly when you are closest to change? There is a reason. And once you understand it, the strange events happening around you may start making sense. Because the next stage of your expansion is not about becoming someone else. It is about discovering what was already there. The strange part about transformation is that your old life does not always disappear quietly. Sometimes it fights to stay. The moment you decide to change, the old patterns may suddenly become louder. You may feel the urge to return to people you already know are not good for your peace. You may start doubting decisions you were once certain about. You may suddenly remember the past and wonder, was it really that bad? This is where many people turn back, not because they truly want their old life, but because the unknown feels more frightening than the familiar pain. Think about standing at the edge of a bridge. Behind you is everything you already know. The same streets, the same habits, the same fears, the same conversations, the same version of yourself. In front of you is something you cannot fully see. You know you need to cross, but you cannot see the entire path. So you hesitate. One step forward, then one step backward. One moment of courage, then another moment of doubt. But what if you do not need to see the entire bridge? What if you only need enough courage to take the next step? That is how expansion works. You are rarely given the whole map. You are given the next step, then another, and eventually, you look back and realize you traveled farther than you ever believed possible. This is why you should stop demanding certainty from your future. Certainty is not always required for movement. Sometimes trust comes first, then evidence follows. You may not know exactly where your career is going. You may not know which relationships will remain. You may not know how your dreams will become real. You may not know what the next 6 months will look like. And that is okay. You do not need the entire answer today. You need enough courage to stop living according to an answer that no longer feels true. Because something has changed. You have changed. And once you change internally, the things you tolerate begin to change too. The conversations you once accepted may suddenly feel empty. The places you once wanted to stay may no longer feel like home. The approval you once chased may stop satisfying you. This can be confusing. You might even feel guilty. You might think, why am I becoming so different? But growth often feels strange because your mind is trying to recognize a version of you it has never seen before. You are learning new boundaries, new standards, new ways of thinking, new ways of responding. You are learning that peace does not need to be earned through suffering. You are learning that saying no does not make you cruel. You are learning that walking away does not always mean you lost. Sometimes walking away means you finally chose yourself. And there is a deeper shift happening underneath all of this. You are becoming less available for anything that requires you to betray your own values. That is why some doors feel uncomfortable now. They were built for an older version of you. You keep trying to squeeze yourself through them, but you were never meant to fit anymore. So maybe the question is not, why can't I get back to how things were? Maybe the better question is, why am I still trying to return to something I have already outgrown? That question changes everything. Because once you stop fighting your growth, you begin moving with it. You begin noticing opportunities that were invisible before. You begin hearing your own thoughts more clearly. You begin recognizing patterns. And suddenly, moments that once looked like random coincidences start connecting. A conversation, a decision, a delay, a closed door, a new idea, a feeling that tells you to wait, a feeling that tells you to move. You start realizing that your life has been teaching you something through all of them. Not every event has a mystical explanation, but every experience can become meaningful when you learn from it. That is where your real power begins. You stop asking life to give you a perfect path and start becoming someone who can walk any path with greater courage. That is expansion, not becoming invincible, becoming resilient, not having no fear, moving despite fear, not knowing everything, trusting yourself while you learn. And maybe this is the message you needed today. You are not being asked to become fearless. You are being asked to stop letting fear make your decisions. Read that again. Because your next chapter may require a decision your old self would never have made. A decision to stop chasing. A decision to begin. A decision to forgive. A decision to leave. A decision to create. A decision to believe in yourself before anyone else does. And once you make that decision, something very important happens. Your attention begins moving away from what you lost and toward what you are becoming. But there is still one final layer. Because even after you recognize your expansion, there is a hidden force that can pull you back into your old identity. It disguises itself as logic. It sounds reasonable. It sounds safe. And if you do not recognize it, you may mistake it for your true voice, when it is actually the voice of the person you are leaving behind. That hidden force is doubt. Not the kind of doubt that simply asks you to think carefully. This is the doubt that arrives when you are finally ready to move. It whispers, maybe you should wait. Maybe you are imagining all of this. Maybe you are not ready. Maybe people will laugh. Maybe you will fail. And because these thoughts sound practical, you may believe they are protecting you. But sometimes doubt is not protecting you from danger. It is protecting you from change. There is a difference. Your mind naturally prefers what it already knows. Even if the familiar situation makes you unhappy, at least it feels predictable. You know what tomorrow looks like. You know what people expect from you. You know which mistakes you have already made. But expansion asks you to enter territory where you do not have all the answers. And that can feel uncomfortable. Imagine standing before a massive gate. Behind you is your old life. In front of you is a road covered in morning light. The gate is open, completely open, but you are still standing there. Why? Because you keep waiting for someone to tell you that you are allowed to walk through. Nobody comes. The road remains silent. And eventually, you realize something. The gate was never waiting for someone else. It was waiting for you. This is where your responsibility begins. You cannot control every event in your life. You cannot control who stays. You cannot control who leaves. You cannot control every opportunity. You cannot control every delay. But you can control what you do with the person you are becoming. You can choose your response. You can choose your direction. You can choose what deserves your energy. And that choice becomes powerful when you repeat it every day. One small decision becomes a habit. A habit becomes a pattern. A pattern becomes an identity. And an identity begins shaping the way you experience your life. This is why your expansion may feel slow at first. You may expect one huge moment to transform everything. But real change often happens quietly. You wake up and choose differently. You speak differently. You think differently. You protect your peace differently. You stop reacting to every little thing. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's attention. And one day, you look back and realize you are no longer the person who once needed those things. That is the moment you know something has shifted. Not because the world suddenly became perfect, because you became stronger inside it. And now listen carefully. Your expansion is not about becoming better than anyone else. It is not about proving that you were right. It is not about making people regret losing you. It is not about becoming so successful that everyone who doubted you has to watch. Those things may feel satisfying for a moment, but they are still connected to the old version of you. The deeper expansion is different. You stop needing an audience. You stop needing revenge. You stop needing validation. You simply become committed to becoming the person you know you can be. Quietly, consistently, without announcing every move. And that is when your energy changes. Your focus becomes stronger. Your time becomes more valuable. Your standards become clearer. Your dreams stop feeling like fantasies and start becoming responsibilities. What can I build? What can I learn? Who do I want to become? What am I willing to leave behind? What would happen if I actually trusted myself? These questions create movement. And movement creates evidence. Every small action becomes proof that you are capable of changing your life. You do not need to feel powerful before you act. Sometimes you act first, and the feeling comes later. So if you are waiting to feel completely ready, stop waiting. You may never feel completely ready. Courage is not the absence of uncertainty. Courage is deciding that uncertainty will not control you. The future does not require the old you to disappear. It requires the old you to stop holding the steering wheel. Let that line stay with you, because you are approaching a point where your choices will matter more than your excuses. And something beautiful happens when you finally stop fighting the person you are becoming. You become lighter. You begin sleeping with fewer questions. You begin waking with more direction. You begin noticing that the things you once called losses were sometimes turning points. The relationship that ended taught you something. The opportunity that disappeared redirected you. The rejection strengthened you. The waiting period developed you. The lonely season revealed you. And now you can look back without needing to relive any of it. You can simply say, "It taught me." Then you move forward. But there is still one more step. Because recognizing your expansion is one thing. Living from it is another. And in the next moment, I want you to understand the simple shift that can help you stop waiting for your new life to begin. Because your expansion is not somewhere in the future. It begins with what you choose today. So what do you do now? You stop waiting. Not because everything is suddenly clear. Not because every problem has disappeared. But because you finally understand that your next chapter cannot be built from endless hesitation. Your expansion begins with today, with the next choice, the next thought, the next action. You do not need to completely rebuild your life overnight. Start smaller. Wake up and decide that you will no longer speak to yourself like an enemy. When something goes wrong, do not immediately call yourself a failure. When someone walks away, do not immediately assume you are not enough. When an opportunity disappears, do not automatically believe your future disappeared with it. Pause, breathe, and ask yourself a better question. What is this moment teaching me? That question can change the way you experience everything. Because there are moments you cannot change, but you can change what those moments become inside you. A painful ending can become wisdom. A rejection can become direction. A delay can become preparation. A mistake can become experience. A quiet season can become the place where you finally hear yourself clearly. This is how expansion becomes real. You stop waiting for life to give you a perfect sign, and you become willing to create movement with what you already have. Maybe you have one idea. Start there. Maybe you have one goal. Take one step. Maybe you have one skill you need to learn. Begin learning. Maybe there is one conversation you have been avoiding. Have it when the time is right. Maybe there is one habit that keeps pulling you backward. Release it slowly. You do not need to transform your entire life in one night. You only need to stop betraying the person you are becoming. And this is where something powerful happens. The more you act in alignment with your new identity, the less convincing your old identity becomes. The things that once felt impossible begin feeling normal. Discipline becomes normal. Boundaries become normal. Peace becomes normal. Choosing yourself becomes normal. Trying again becomes normal. Believing in your future becomes normal. And one day, you will realize that the life you once hoped for did not arrive all at once. You built it through hundreds of small decisions nobody noticed. That is why you should not underestimate today. Today may look ordinary, but ordinary days create extraordinary lives. One decision can redirect a year. One habit can change your health, your work, your relationships, and your confidence. One moment of courage can introduce you to a completely different future. So do not ask, when will my expansion begin? Ask, what can I expand today? Your thinking, your courage, your patience, your knowledge, your creativity, your ability to forgive, your ability to walk away, your ability to begin again. This is the real shift. You stop waiting for a new reality to make you a new person. You become a new person through your choices. And then your reality begins to reflect those choices. Maybe that is why this video found you today. Not because you were meant to sit here waiting for something mysterious to happen, but because you needed a reminder. A reminder that your life is still moving. A reminder that uncertainty does not mean you are lost. And a reminder that your next chapter does not need permission from your past. So take a deep breath. Let your shoulders relax. And for just a moment, imagine yourself standing before that open gate again. This time, you do not wait. You step forward. One step, then another. You do not know everything waiting beyond the gate, but you no longer need to. Because you trust yourself to meet it. And maybe that is the greatest expansion of all. Not knowing exactly what comes next, but knowing that whatever comes next, you will meet it as someone stronger, wiser, calmer, and more awake than before. Your new life does not begin when the fear disappears. It begins when you decide that fear no longer gets to choose your direction. If this message reached something inside you, pause here for a second. Take one more breath. And say quietly to yourself, I am ready for what comes next. Not because you know exactly what comes next, but because you are no longer afraid of becoming more. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to leave behind what no longer fits. You are allowed to dream bigger. You are allowed to become someone your past could never have imagined. And most importantly, you are allowed to begin again without apologizing for it. The door is open. The old chapter is behind you. The road ahead is waiting. And this time, you are not standing at the beginning wondering whether you are ready. You are already moving. Your expansion has begun. And now, there is nothing left to prove. You have spent enough time wondering whether you are ready. You have spent enough time looking backward. You have spent enough time asking why certain things happened, why certain people left, why certain doors closed, and why your life did not unfold according to the picture you once imagined. Maybe you will never understand every detail, and you do not need to. Because sometimes the meaning of a chapter only becomes clear after you have already walked through it. What felt like an ending may become the reason you found a new beginning. What felt like rejection may become the moment you finally chose yourself. What felt like being lost may become the exact period that taught you how to find your own direction. So stop looking at your past as proof that you are behind. Look at it as evidence that you survived every version of yourself that once believed you could not make it. You are still here, still learning, still growing, still becoming. And that means your story is not finished, not even close. There is more for you to experience, more to learn, more to create, more to become. But this time, you do not have to rush toward it. You can walk. You can breathe. You can trust the process without needing every answer immediately. Your expansion does not need to be loud. It does not need an announcement. It does not need everyone around you to understand. Some of the most powerful changes in your life will happen quietly. You will simply wake up one morning and realize, I don't react like I used to. You will notice that something that once broke your heart no longer controls your peace. You will notice that you no longer chase what keeps running away from you. You will notice that being alone does not automatically mean being lonely. You will notice that your dreams no longer feel impossible. And perhaps the biggest change, you will stop asking the world to tell you who you are. You will know. That is the point of expansion, not becoming someone completely different. Becoming more fully yourself. The person underneath the fear. The person underneath the expectations. The person underneath all the stories you were told about what you could or could not become. That person has been waiting. Not for someone to rescue them. Not for a perfect moment. Just for you to finally listen. So listen now. If something inside you keeps telling you to grow, listen. If something inside you keeps telling you to begin, listen. If something inside you keeps telling you that you have stayed too long in places where you no longer belong, listen. You do not have to understand the entire journey before taking the first step. You only need to stop ignoring the truth you already feel. And if this video found you today, maybe the reason is simple. You needed to remember that your life is still unfolding. You needed to remember that one difficult season does not define your entire story. You needed to remember that your future is not required to look like your past. You needed to remember that you can change your direction at any moment. So from this moment forward, stop asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is this preparing me for? Stop asking. Start asking, what am I being invited to discover without them? Stop asking, why am I not where I thought I would be? Start asking, who am I becoming on the way there? Those questions create a different life. Because your attention is powerful. Where you place it matters. If you constantly look at what is missing, you will miss what is growing. If you constantly look backward, you may overlook the door opening in front of you. So look forward. Not with blind optimism, with courage, with patience, with the understanding that you do not need to have everything figured out today. Your next chapter can be built one day at a time, one choice at a time, one brave step at a time. And if you ever feel yourself slipping back into the old version of you, remember this moment. Remember the feeling you have right now. Remember that you once decided you wanted more. More peace. More purpose. More freedom. More truth. More life. Do not betray that decision just because the journey becomes uncomfortable. Growth has never required comfort. It has required willingness. And you are willing. You are still here. You are still listening. You are still searching. You are still becoming. That is enough for today. So take one final breath and say it with certainty. I am not going backward. Again. I am not going backward. And one more time. I am becoming. Because you are. Not someday. Not when everything becomes perfect. Now. The life you have been waiting for begins with the version of you who finally believes they are worthy of living it. Let that be the thought you carry after this video ends. And when you leave this screen, do not search for another sign. Be the sign. Take the step. Make the decision. Protect your peace. Start the dream. Release what no longer belongs. And trust that every small movement forward is creating a path you could not see before. This video found you today for a reason. Maybe the reason was not to tell you what your future will be. Maybe it was simply to remind you that your future is still yours to create. Your expansion has begun. Now, go live like it.